this is our new accessory. It looks very similar. I'll put it on my white background so you can see it clearly. It looks like our Spooky remote, and in some ways it is modeled to look that way, but it's very different. What it is, it's a sample holder. It's for use for Generator X. As most of you all know, Generator X performs its biofeedback by monitoring the electrical signal that passes through the output. Your body changes the signal and reflects it back to the Generator X electronics. And then Generator X knows which frequencies produce the greatest biological responses, the resonant points, if you like, within your cells. And it's very fast, very effective, very, da-da-da-da. You've heard this before, but this is new. And what this does is very, very exciting. You use it with these PCBs. These are sample plates. The idea is you place some DNA sample on the plate. You cover it with a second plate. And you put it inside the DNA holder. Comme ça, like that. You connect this part onto your generator and you perform your biofeedback scan. Because you're not connected with hand cylinders or TENS pads, you're not restricted. You don't have to wait around for the result. And so you can perform a biofeedback scan more accurately. You do it more accurately by increasing the samples per step. If you have a samples per step of 10, that means that for 10 cycles, the generator will measure the value of that frequency before it steps to the next frequency, and it will take the average of those 10. And so the effects of electrical noise and other spurious signals is reduced markedly, and the results are smoother. The regular biofeedback scan that comes in the preset for Generator X is, it uses a samples per step value of 1. It goes for a blast for just over 6.5 minutes, which is extremely fast for the frequency range. But you can get the accuracy greater still by slowing it down and increasing the samples per step. So we put our sample here. What sort of sample can you use? You can't put nails. The reason you can't put nails is these plates have to be virtually touching. For all intents and purposes, they are touching. So it's an extremely small gap between the two. You'll be asking right now, why is there a gap when I've just said the word touching? Well, on the inside of these PCBs is a ring, a white ring. That's a screen printing on the printed circuit board. And there's 2 more here as well. The thickness of this ink is the gap that is presented for each half of these when they join together. And so it's like a tiny, tiny gap between these 2 plates. And what this does is form a capacitor. It forms a biological capacitor. The sort of samples that you want to put in here, I guess the ideal is blood. But one thing that's much more convenient is saliva. Saliva has a terrific amount of DNA and a terrific amount of pathogens that are residing inside your body within your saliva. As you know, you can catch many different diseases just through, doing things with your saliva, let's say. And so saliva certainly is a very viable solution to use for the biofeedback. As I said, it's got to be something liquid so it squishes down to nothing. And so you put either your blood or your saliva or something else. If you have got some other type of cell tissue that you can put in there, that's great, as long as it's very, very, very thin. And you sandwich it like this. You have it so that these gold contacts are exposed. These are contacts that are connected to plates on the other side of this holder. And the contacts in turn contact little pins inside the holder. You can see 2 at the bottom and 2 on the top. When we were designing for this unit, I was explaining something to one of the crew here, and I drew the sample holder and I drew the pins. Then I thought to myself, gosh, that looks like a hippopotamus. So I drew the eyes and the nose and we made it a hippo. But we decided against modelling it around a hippo because it's not quite the look we're after. But we're digressing. We put the holder inside here. There's 2 locating holes here. They ensure that it's positioned correctly inside the holder. And you put it inside here and you close it up. You might want to give it a wiggle until it's secure. And now you just put it onto your generator, or it might be connected to your generator already. Output number 1. The biofeedback only works on output number 1 for generator X, for both of those generators. Don't use a boost. A boost isn't necessary and only increases the amount of noise that may enter the electrical circuitry. And then you go. You just push the do it button and the biofeedback starts. We'll be creating a preset specifically for the generator X sample holder, and it'll be very similar to the existing generator X biofeedback because the frequency range is pretty good. We might drop the lower frequency because we've had reports of frequencies below 41 kilohertz providing very good results, and so we may do the preset starting from 20 kilohertz going up to 18 megahertz. Wow, what a range. And then you do the scan, and then at the end of the scan, you just look at the results the same as you do using your contact mode of biofeedback. Now, that's the nuts and bolts of this. I want to talk about, I've got the bottom one upside down. I'm showing you how to do it wrong. So on both sides, we have the golden contacts, and then you slide it in. Maybe that's why it didn't go in so easily the first time. There we go. So you just see black and black. Now, some of the tissue that you may be wanting to sample will be quite yucky stuff. Let's say it is blood. You don't really want to be handing blood too often. So if you do use these things and you put it in and do it, it's probably best to, after the biofeedback scan, to throw it away. You can wash these plates. After a while, the moisture will get absorbed by these printed circuit boards, and the results will not be quite so accurate. But we'll be selling these cheap, so don't be afraid to throw them away and get other ones. Okay, so that's the nuts and bolts, but there's an exciting different way of applying this. And let's think about things. I want to take you back in history. I want to take you back 5 years, 6 years even, when Jhon Stegmann was pioneering the use of remotes. He started investigating the method of remote treatment when he found that he could cure his racing pigeons. He had them dying for some reason, and he consulted his friend, his healing friend, who informed him about this method of using doing remote healing. And so Jhon tried it on his pigeons, and he saved his pigeons. And so he started experimenting on people, seeing if he can have a similar effect on people. So it's not just feathered friends, but also hairy friends, or maybe not quite so hairy friends, who can also respond to these frequencies. And he had success, and that's when I sort of came on the scene and tried to prove him wrong, and that's another story again. But this is one thing that Jhon discovered, which hasn't really been publicly stated. Because Jhon was a good friend of mine, he and I talked a lot. Being technically inclined, I'd ask the questions that maybe he couldn't answer straight away, so he'd have to ask his friend. And one of the questions I asked him was this. When we are using a Spooky remote, I haven't got a remote here to show you, but you know what they look like. You put the DNA in, you put it into the, the holder, then you put it into the generator, and then you run the programs. And the frequencies, because the DNA is linked to the DNA in your body, they're both created in the same space and time. the frequencies you're applying to the remote are also applied to your body simultaneously. But the question I asked Jhon was this: is it a two-way street? Can the frequencies in your body also affect the frequencies in the holder? He said yes, but he will check, and he checked, and then the answer came back as a firm yes. In other words, if I put a DNA sample in here of my saliva or my blood, put it in the sample holder, I can use this also as a first generation remote. It won't be as good as a Spooky remote because this is how it all started, so we've advanced from there. But think of it. We use this for biofeedback scans. After the scan, you can use it for treatment. And think about this. We can automate that. So during the course of a day, we can do a biofeedback scan. We can then apply the frequencies that were returned by the scan automatically, and then do another cycle of a biofeedback scan. So you might do 10 biofeedback scans on the one sample in one day, and 10 slightly different programs each time will then be run. After each program, the biofeedback scans will change the values to reflect whatever the program, what effect the program's had. And so always the cells that, the pathogens which are the noisiest, they'll be the first to go. And so at the end of a day, just think about it. You'd have killed off pretty much all these ones that are, bothering you. The amount of work to do this manually is quite intense, which is why we create presets. But we also say, look, run a preset every 3 days. We're doing that with Spooky Pulse. With Generator X, we say do it every day because it's actually fun doing a biofeedback scan. But here, it's like doing it 10 times and it's automatic. And the treatment afterwards is automatic. And so really, when you think about it, it's a great idea. You don't need to know what it is that's wrong with you because the biofeedback is telling Spooky what's wrong. Your body doesn't lie. And so according to the results of the biofeedback scan, Spooky automatically throws the frequencies down to the same device. And so it does a biofeedback scan, then does a 1 hour program, to run the frequencies that were found with the biofeedback, and then does another biofeedback scan. Now I'm telling you things which aren't in Spooky yet. This was my Monday job. This is the Monday gone. And so things have come up since, between then and now, and I just haven't had the chance to write the code for this. But it's my full intent to modify Spooky so it has this facility. So if you've got something wrong with it, you really don't know what it is, and it's just ongoing, and that, a preset to treat serious conditions is quite complex. You know what they look like. You've got to run one thing, then you've got to do a biofeedback, copy and paste the biofeedback results into the preset, then run this preset on generator number 1 and this on number 2 and la. It's very complicated. And life's too short to be reading manuals. So I think the new generation of approach, if you like, is to use this on one generator of Generator X. And Generator X has got 2 generators. On the second one, run a detox program 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so one is doing all the treatment and the other one's doing all the cleaning up afterwards. And so that's brilliant. So that's it. So any questions about that? I'll just see if any questions have come through. Let's have a look. Yes, okay. Bev from New Zealand is asking, if you do 10 feedbacks in one day, wouldn't you also need to be doing a lot of detox at the same time? Yes, well, you do the second generator with the detox, and so that'll be running all the time non-stop. And of course, it's always best to have more generators to help the treatment overall, especially for the serious conditions. I generally give the cheapest solution because we're aware that people, they spend the money on their drugs and doctors, and they haven't got much, many funds left over. But certainly, if you've got more generators in your rig, then use them. Use them for detox. Use them for balancing, and use them for healing. And let the biofeedback handle this, the serious stuff. Actually, while I'm talking now, I've already said that this as a remote wouldn't be anywhere near as good as a proper Spooky remote. As you may recall, when we first started developing remotes, it was thought that remotes were about 20 times less efficient or effective than contact mode. The current Spooky remote is the same as contact mode. So we can probably assume that this is about like a 1/20th the effectiveness, but it's still getting the frequencies through. And this is all that Jhon Stegman used with his pigeons. So it worked for him. With remotes, you're not really restricted to time because you don't have to hang around. You can put your saliva on here, put it all inside your sample holder, and then load the preset and go. And through the day, you'll be having 10 different programs run. And so you're not worried too much about the time it's going to take. You're going down the path of healing. And maybe it's good that it is slow. It gives your body time to remove the toxins. So that's another thought again. Now, because the DNA or the biological sample that you put in here is biodegradable. It's not like a fingernail or a hair follicle, which both of those last reasonably long. Certainly a nail does. You'd want to change this once a day, definitely. You don't want this to be drying out and caking the unit. So I'd say maybe 8 hours maximum. A lot would depend on the country where you live, how warm it is. In the summer months, you'd want to really keep an eye on it. You don't want to have it start going nasty on you. So I'd say at the very most 8 hours, which is a working day. You set it up, go to work, and come back much healthier. Yeah. So that's the concept. So I'm pretty excited about that. That's the fact that you can automate a treatment method and not worry about the other details such as which programs to run, copying, pasting frequencies into a preset, which is so complicated. It's got to be color coded, saying which program belongs to which generator. It just simplifies things a lot. Okay, let's have a look. Other questions? Is it available now? No, it's not available now. It's available early next year. No, I'm kidding. I wouldn't do that to you guys. It's available, I'm told, in 1 or 2 weeks. So it's not long to wait. In other ways, it differs from Spooky Remote. The spring pressure is greater. Still easy to use, but it needs to be high pressure down to ensure that the plates are perfectly mated together. Think about this. If we have a cancer cell sample from a biopsy and we put that in here, pure cancer cells, right? And you put this plate on, you do you put the sample holder on, you do your test. The results are going to be so pristine. They're going to tell you pretty much what the cancer frequencies are. That's kind of the holy grail. So, this is a good tool that we're sort of putting out there. It's up to you to make use of it and report back to us the best way of using it. We've done our trials and we've been amazed. It started when I was unwell and I had a flu and a sore throat. And sore throats are kind of cool because you know pretty quickly when you're getting better. And so I put my saliva sample in. It wasn't these. It was just a couple of old PCBs I had lying around, but this is much more advanced. And I put them together, put some tape around there, insulation tape, soldered a couple of leads on and put them onto a BNC port for the generator. And I got some frequencies back and I ran those frequencies on a remote. Normally with a remote, it takes about an hour to really feel an effect on the new speaker remotes. Or maybe it's even shorter, but these, because the frequencies were pretty much bang on for the pathogen I had at that time, I felt the results within minutes. Yeah, but as things are with the cold, things mutate quite quickly, and I got better very quickly. But then it sort of went down into my chest, and of course I was busy doing my designing of this and other things, and I put myself way back in the priority line, and so my I didn't get rid of my cold, and then it just moved. That's the thing with viruses; they mutate and move. They want to survive. They are in a hostile environment that wants to kill them, and so they're morphing all the time. So database frequencies for pathogens, many of those are quite old, and it wouldn't surprise me if many of those have changed in some way, which is where grade programs is so important. It tells you which frequencies are more applicable, and also refined frequencies type scanning as well, because that puts it decimal places, if you like, on the scans. Okay, another question that's come in online. Okay, let's have a look. Now, isn't it funny? It's truncated the people's names, so I'll just stretch out the window. So I don't like. I like to answer people properly with the name. Okay, so Adam. We had two ADs in the viewers list. Okay, Adam, you're asking me, would it create a more accurate database if we put a known sample of pathogen in and then ran a biofeedback scan? Absolutely, you've hit it on the head. Now, this is exactly what it does. So if you when you do a biofeedback scan, you've got TENS pads here, for example. I've given this as an example because you can't see if I point down there. So TENS pads here. Most of the tissue between here is going to be healthy tissue. Only a small proportion of that is going to be pathogens. And so the ratio of bugs over good is quite low. But if you put a sample here which is pretty much pure bugs, well, it's going to be much more accurate, the results. If you're ever on a noisy bus, you try talking to one person, well, it's hard to hear that one person. But if that bus is empty and you're talking to the one person, then they become legible. You can hold a decent conversation. Well, we don't want to hold conversations with bugs. We want to kill them. But we need to know what frequencies, we want to know what language they're talking. And so this tells you what the language is. And so absolutely, Adam, if you can put a sample of the bug in there, then that's great. And so if you've got a cold, maybe you want to put some nasal discharge. Actually, that's what I used. I think I used my nasal discharge when I got the cold. Yeah, yuck. Which is really why we make these disposable. You don't really want to be using it for something else after you've used it for a nasal discharge. But for the good of science, that's what I did. And got fantastic results. I couldn't identify the pathogen that was providing these frequency hits, but as sure as anything provided results. And it's not important for me when I'm sick, moderately sick, to put a label on something. It's more important to get rid of it. And so if we do an automated scan and then treatment, then scan, then treatment using the sample holder, we wouldn't use it for a biofeedback reverse lookup so you can see what kind of bugs you're likely to have, or bugs that match the same frequency. You just want to apply the frequencies and get rid of the bugs. So that's how we'll be using it. Okay, when using blood drops, this is a question from Tafiq. I hope I've said your name correctly. Benjamin. Can it be placed on filter paper? And if you're using blood from multiple people, can you just wipe the plates using alcohol wipes? Good questions. We have done trials using different types of papers as a way of sort of holding liquid together more something. just holding it all together while you put the plates on, we found that it improved physically the sample. The sample didn't sort of squish out so far and sort of ooze out, but the results weren't so accurate. And it wasn't so accurate because it introduced a space into these plates. Now I'm exaggerating here, but any sort of space decreases the capacitance. It makes it so that a much lower signal level is passing through the plates. And so the spikes were much smaller. So the answer is yes, you can, but the results aren't quite so good. Maybe you can find extra thin paper where you're using paper that was maybe 0.05 millimeters thick. Maybe you can find some thinner paper and you can report back to us and we can make it a part of the procedure. Okay, and you're also asking me, can it be wiped between use with alcohol? Absolutely, you can wipe it with alcohol. Just one point of mention, alcohol is good for killing, any sort of biological residue, any pathogens that may be still on the plates. But just remember, the sample holder works on the change of an electrical signal. It doesn't rely on the sample actually being alive. It's looking at the electrical characteristics of that sample. So if I could slice a carrot thin enough and put it in here, it'll do a biofeedback on the carrot. And it may provide hits. But it doesn't need to be live. So it's not necessary to kill the pathogen for the cleaning side of it, but certainly for the hygiene side, best to. For our tests, we'd be doing multiple tests, and we just wash it with water and soap. If we're to use it for different people, between different people, absolutely use alcohol, but I'd be more inclined to throw it away because, it's not very, they get dirty and they absorb. So it's best to use either pristine, clean, or new. Okay, any more questions online? No? Okay, well, let's start our presentation. We're halfway through the summer already, and so we won't slouch on the presentation. Oh my goodness, I've got other questions online as well. Okay, well, I'll fly through them. Can we use saliva, urine, blood, etc., nail clippings? Everything's above except for nail, because nails are too thick. So the nails will make the plates too far apart. But you can use urine, blood, saliva, any other body fluids like that. To clean it, you just unclip the plates and then you can wash the plates and then dry them. Wash them, you can use soap and water, but if you're really serious, you can use alcohol, as Adam suggested. If it's a serious disease, then certainly use alcohol, because you don't want to have any form of contamination. I would really suggest to use one. Don't use the same plates for different people. You really don't want to have any sort of contamination between the two. Do you need to seal outer perimeter with an oil so sample doesn't dry out? Well, the ring of silk screening that's around here tends to form a seal when you join the two together. They seal together, so it's a ring. And so when the pressure is applied, the sample doesn't hold out. And we've run it for well over 10 hours in a very warm environment, and the samples didn't dry out. But if you leave it there for a few days, you'll get caking, and that's when it gets ugly. Okay. Monica, Ruth, you're asking, so the scan is going to be much more accurate. Yes, it is going to be much more accurate because we're not measuring all the healthy cells that are between TENS pads. We're measuring all the nasty cells that are in here. Now, if you're using something like a saliva sample, you will still be getting a lot of good cells in there, but the ratio of bad over good is much higher. And I don't want to go into graphic detail with such a, with everyone watching, but basically when you do put a sample in here, you make sure you put the yucky stuff in there. So use your imagination when I say this. Let's use the yucky stuff there. And then you'll get better results. It's the ratio of bad over good is much higher. And Judy Budicio, you're asking, how could you fit a biopsy sample in? Well, biopsy samples are quite often they're solid samples, but if you can get slithers of them, very fine slithers, and place them on here, like maybe put them on those 6 locations there, then that will be adequate. The important thing to make sure is that the plates are as close as possible. Any gap will start introducing errors. Everyone knows how we live in such a noisy environment with Wi-Fi and cell phones. As soon as you put a gap in here, that signal is going in here and disturbing the results. And because the signals are so low, any sort of noise is going to ruin that. And so you really want this as close as possible. If I was doing a biopsy and I couldn't get thin samples, I'd be probably looking at the liquid around the sample. I'd look at centrifuging and using the liquid. And that would be a way of improving the results, because it's on the microscopic level, which will be still viable after it's been centrifuged. That would be a very good sample substrate to use.